बताएंगे।
ताइना, आप होस्ट बना दिए। ओके।
Yeah, please remove waiting room. Thank you.
Hello, Taina. Hello, Kirti. Thank you for joining today.
Hi, Katerina. Hi, Kirti. How are you both doing today?
Good, thanks, Taina. How are you, Katya?
All good, all good. Thank you for asking. Hoping the same on your end. And thanks to the audiences that have already joined. I think Taina will take a couple more minutes to wait for someone else to join, right?
That's correct. So give me 2 more minutes and we'll get started after that.
Perfect. Thank you.
One more minute, please, Katerina, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so please allow me to begin now. So good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's had a good day so far. Thanking everybody for taking out their valuable time for this discussion today. We thank our partners, the Global Education and Leadership Foundation and ESG Entrepreneurship Sports Generation for the relentless support that they have shown to MSH. It gives me great pride to introduce our speaker for the day, Mr. Kirtilal Kala, Vice President, New Technology Sun Group. Sir started his career as an engineer in R&D focused startups and moved into technocrat roles, working with the Prime Minister of India's office on multilateral government efforts in industry bodies. He's also co-authored the book Promoting Innovation in Clusters. The topic for discussion that Sir will take up today would be entrepreneurship as the co-driver of economic growth and job creation. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Diana. If everybody is okay, we might as well begin, or do you want to wait for another 30-40 seconds for a couple more people to join in?
No, I think we could begin, and also if you have a deck, please feel free to share the same.
Sure. I don't have a presentation, though. It's just a conversation. I thought it would be better to have a free-flowing conversation with people who are part of this interaction. But to kind of put a bunch of thoughts around, the topic that you just mentioned, how does entrepreneurship help economic growth and create employment opportunities? It can be looked at in multiple ways, right? And it seems quite obvious that entrepreneurs create wealth, create jobs, and then thereby help economic growth. But I thought a couple of things which come out of entrepreneurial activity, I wanted to highlight today and just create points for all of us to think through and maybe have a free-flowing conversation around them later in the later part of this conversation. First and foremost, it's pretty easy. All of us understand that what does an entrepreneur do? He's trying to create a product or a service that people actually need. But that itself is a big step in economic empowerment and solving problems that we see on a daily basis, so that it frees up time for people to do more productive activities. Right? It's fairly clear. Any kind of product or service that is put out by an entrepreneur in the market is helping a person in need, or someone who's looking for a particular solution, or someone who's looking for something to alleviate a particular pain point. It brings value to the customer, whoever the intended customer or consumer of the particular offering is, and thereby it is helping in enhancing the value that he is providing to all of us as a society in general, correct? So that's one way of looking at it. That's how an entrepreneur can empower economic growth in one sense. Another aspect that we entrepreneurs bring to the table is what we tend to overlook, but we use almost on a daily basis in every kind of activity that we do, is they bring about significant regional and commercial integration across borders, across state borders, across country borders, all over the planet, and in India particularly. What do we mean by that? Imagine someone sitting in a faraway town somewhere in the hinterlands of India, and then you sitting in one of the tier 1 cities somewhere. You are in a position to have an economic transaction with that person because of a solution leveraging technology that some entrepreneur has put out. That is how you are integrating people from across different parts of the country and across parts of the world into a common value chain, and that is where economic integration is coming in. And it is quite possible for in almost all scenarios that both parties at both ends of the transaction are deriving value out of it, and that's how it empowers or creates economic value for everybody involved as part of the process. And that is something that an entrepreneur is doing on a daily basis because of the product or the service that he or she has created and put out for everybody to use. Third element that I thought was interesting because of entrepreneurs and the kind of solutions that they're bringing forth, especially over the past 2 decades, I would say, when digitalization and a lot of infusion of ICT technologies has become the norm. It's modernization of both rural, semi-urban and urban India. The kind of facilities that we enjoy today at the click of a button or at the touch of a phone call were not available 20 years back. And all of these solutions more or less have been created by entrepreneurs who thought, hey, this is a pain point. Somebody felt a need for it and they leveraged technology to create that particular solution. But that has also helped us become a modern society at large in general. So that's the third element that I thought was interesting that one could bring to the table when we are talking about how entrepreneurs can be drivers of economic growth. The fourth element that one can think of is solutions that entrepreneurs are creating are typically also oriented towards enhancing efficiency in processes or reducing time taken for a particular element or for a particular job. Now that itself is creating huge value. You're improving the efficiency in the process, you're reducing consumption of resources, thereby leading to savings, thereby leading to economic gains. Now that is a big element that also comes into the picture, simply because as an entrepreneur, you have created a solution that has, let's say, reduced the time taken for one activity from 10 days to 2 days. Now the 8 days that you have saved is of significant economic value. And that is how you are creating economic space for economic growth in the entire cycle and the effort that you're undertaking. Another way of looking at it, or another perspective that comes into picture when we think about how entrepreneurs are helping drive economic growth, and all of us have seen this right from our school to our jobs to even if you're running companies, entrepreneurs breed competition. And why is competition good? When two people are competing with each other, they're trying to be better at whatever they're doing, which means it only enhances the offering that they're putting on the table, which means because of the virtue of that enhancement, the value proposition or the value that can be derived out of the offering only gets enhanced or increases. Thereby, if we just kind of look at the other points that we had just discussed, which is, let's say, integration of regional economies across the board, because there is competition, somebody comes forth and says, hey, I can do a better job of integrating than you are. Or somebody can come forth and say, hey, I can create a better efficient process or a more efficient process than what you have created. And that's how competition breeds better economic value creation, because of entrepreneurs competing with each other to provide good products and services to the customers, the end customers at the end of the day. Another perspective that comes into mind when we think about how entrepreneurs are enabling economic growth is something that in India especially, or in emerging economies or in developing countries all over the planet, which is very relevant and very much needed even today, is inclusive growth, as we call it. What do we mean by inclusive growth? The person who's at the lowest rung of the socio-economic value chain should also be included in your development process. It could be by way of provision of healthcare. It could be by provision of education, financial services, or access to housing facilities, or access to anything else that you and me, typically living in an urban environment, take for granted, including everybody, everywhere, all over across the country, across economic disparities. As part of that value chain is what entrepreneurs can enable because of the solutions that they bring forth to the table. And we see examples of that on a daily basis, right? If you can afford to spend, let's say, 2,000 rupees, anybody sitting in anywhere, any part of the country can today take a flight, and that is possible because of the solutions that are available for someone to make that booking. Or someone, let's say, is providing you access to hand woven or handcrafted articles or clothing from some remote part of the country, right? That integration is helping that person grow up the economic value chain, because you are willing to pay a fair price directly to the person who's developed the product or designed the product or manufactured or produced the particular product. That is how solutions that entrepreneurs bring to the table can create a inclusive or a socio-economic equality driven growth inside the country. And that's another value prop that we as entrepreneurs definitely bring to the table when we are developing all kinds of startups and all kinds of solutions that we are offering for everybody. The spin-off from this, the spin-off from enhancing economic value across the spectrum is also increasing the standard of living across the spectrum, right? Entrepreneurs and the solutions that they have created over the past 4 to 5 decades have actually made sure that everybody across in any part of the country or in any part of the world can potentially aspire to the same standard of living as his or her peers anywhere else. And I'm sure you would have seen such examples of, if you have people who are living in various parts of the country or various parts of the planet, you know that, something that was possible, that was not possible about 30 years back. Today, they think of it as possible. They can, just pick up the phone and give you a call, which was not that easily possible 30 years down the road. That is ease of living, staying in touch with people, or trying to book a train ticket. Practically anywhere in the country, you can, simply book a train ticket online. Things like that. Or for example, even quality education has become accessible because of the edtech growth that has happened in the past, especially in the past 3 to 4 years across the country. So that is how entrepreneurs and the solutions that they're bringing out are also enabling enhancements in the standard of living across the country, right? That's a big benefit that we as entrepreneurs bring to the country at large. What else can we do? What else as entrepreneurs do we try to do? And how is that adding value to the country and helping us grow economically? Not just improving efficiency of processes. There are a lot of startups and there's a lot of solutions that have emerged in the past, again, 2 to 3 decades, which have slowly helped us conserve the resources that we are using in multiple forms. Energy conservation is a big example, reducing energy consumption, right from, let's say, someone who developed the LEDs and created entire business lines out of it and new products out of it, to big factories using energy management solutions. For the past decade plus, one has been looking at such solutions from different kinds of entrepreneurs, to solutions that have been coming up lately that are helping farmers in reducing water consumption in farming practices by kind of providing them data points, or helping them imbibe new methods of irrigation. All of these are solutions that entrepreneurs are bringing to the table, which is helping us conserve resources, natural resources, as much as we can, right? And that's again something that entrepreneurs and innovators have brought to the table, and that is how we are helping not just grow economically, but also conserve resources that we take for granted from Mother Nature, and take it further and make it available and conserve it for the future generations. And lastly, but not the least, I think all of us clearly understand an entrepreneur, whether he's grown into a large company or an organization, or he's just started and he's recruited 4 or 5 people, a co-founding team of, let's say, 4 or 5 people have come together and created the startup. But at any scale, as they go forward, they are only going to create more employment for people to work with. A lot of us, at least in my case, I started working in a startup which had 40 people way back in 2005. I still respect the people in that startup who gave me my first job. They gave me an employment opportunity, right? And that's how people end up, obviously entrepreneurs end up creating employment and job opportunities for anybody and everybody. And the kind of enterprises that we are seeing today are not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to have multiple technology degrees or masters in multiple sciences to be able to afford a job. From anybody who's who's got a driving license, who can actually get a job today as a rider, or as a partner, as they call it in one of the delivery services, to, of course, people who've got higher education, who've studied anything up to aerospace, are also potentially employable by startups. And that's the range of jobs that entrepreneurs and enterprises that have come up in the past have created and have the potential to create. And collectively, all of these aspects, and as we go on and more enterprises come into the picture. India is the 3rd largest startup economy on the planet today. And as more startups come into play, more solutions come into play, more challenges are addressed on a daily basis by different kinds of startups that we see. The umbrella of solutions and offerings that startups are creating is expanding every day as we speak. From agriculture to healthcare to education to logistics to everything under the sun, enterprise applications, to space solutions that one can think of, to mobility solutions, to working with new materials, to working in energy, to working in any aspect of life that we can imagine. More or less, there is some enterprise trying to change the game, or bring in an innovation in that particular aspect of life, and that is the power that an entrepreneur brings to the table. And all of these activities that are happening on a daily basis and are impending will happen in the near future as well. I am a strong believer that as things as things go at the pace at which they are going today, we will only see a lot more value being added by enterprises and entrepreneurs to each of our lives. It could be in the form of enhancing our own financial strength. It could be in the form of enhancing what we could call as an ease of living. It could be in the form of enhancing what we would call as the standard of living. It could be in, let's say, reducing the carbon footprint of an individual or an organization and making us more responsible or greener citizens. It could be in the form of making sure that the same facilities that we take for granted in urban environments are made available to everybody across the country, no matter which part of the country they are in. It could be in helping reduce accident rates or fatality rates because of multiple reasons across the country by leveraging technologies that can support in let's say emergency response to all of these situations. All of these are solutions that a lot of entrepreneurs are working on, and I'm sure you as people who are interested in this space and people who follow news every day and follow startups across the board clearly see that these solutions are coming every day. And I was just reading today morning that this year itself, in 2021, in India, we've produced roughly 19 unicorns. I mean, it didn't happen obviously overnight. These guys have been there for 5 years to a decade or so. But just in this past 3 quarters until September, 19 unicorns have come out of India. There have been 19 unicorns in the startup space in India. It's only going to grow as we go forward, right from the D2C market to the education market to people working in waste management have started making headways. There are solutions which are coming up for water treatment and providing purified water at your doorstep in one form or the other. Nature conservation, there's solutions that are coming up for keeping a tab on the tiger population of the country. There are solutions that are coming up for keeping a tab on how you as an individual are spending time on a daily basis. The watch that you are wearing is if it is a smartwatch, it is monitoring your health parameters and it is providing you access to information that you never had before, and that's increasing your own standard of living, or making your own helping you become a healthier or a better person and enhancing your standard of living and ease of living as well. So all of these solutions that come together, I believe are driven by entrepreneurs and innovators who start off as crazy people with a crazy idea, but then once the solution actually takes shape and people see value in it, then you start understanding that, hey, this thing has given us a small shift or has changed our perspective of how we see the world in a small way. But collectively, all of these things put together create a lot of value, and of course, along with employment, are helping us become economically better and become a better society, a better community, and a socially and economically equal country and a world as such. So that's what I had in mind. I've barely taken 15 minutes, but I thought this. While I was thinking about what to say here, I was noting down points that I thought were relevant in this context of the topic that was mentioned, which is how entrepreneurs enable economic growth. And these are the things that I could think of. And if any of you has a comment or a question, or would want to throw up something for discussion, I'm very, very happy to take that up.
Thank you so much, Kirti, for the very insightful session. Taina, over to you. And I believe over to the audience's questions.
My apologies. I like to be direct, so I jumped straight into the topic, and I thought just put out the things that come to mind rather than giving a long-winded speech or something that doesn't help at the end of the day. Okay, I see a bunch of questions. First question: what was your first project working in a startup? The first project that I was working in a startup, it's a bit technical. If you're okay with it, I'd love to explain it to you. The first job that I picked up in the startup, and I was put in a project where we were developing solutions for designing. I'm trying to simplify it. Solutions for designing what even today we call 3-dimensional ICs, integrated circuits. if you understand semiconductors and chip technologies or electronics in some form or the other, we were developing, or this was actually an R&D project. The technology did not exist back then. We were developing ways of how do we stack chips one on top of the other and create, in one sense, shrink the entire motherboard that you see in a PC into one single chip package. That's the tech that we were working on, and that was my first project. And this was in 2004, 2005.
Right. Well, I have a very kind of quick, short question, but do you think, I mean, addressing kind of the topic of the whole discussion today, oh, actually, wait, let us actually go with somebody who's actually asked the question in the chat before me.
Kamal,
Yes.
there is a hurdle that many startups face during initial days in terms of gaining customer confidence, since the track record is not there compared to established companies. Do you have any suggestions in this aspect? Well, there are two answers to that, or two thoughts that come in mind in response to that. One, I wouldn't actually create a startup around a particular product or an offering unless I know there is a customer for it, or unless I am confident that I at least have the first customer for that and he's willing to, take that offering or, pay for that particular product or not. In fact, one of the best ways of, doing things is to work with an intended customer to develop the solution rather than, creating a solution and then searching for a customer. That's one thought, and that's one approach that I have seen, which helps a lot. Co-create the solution with your intended customer rather than trying to sell something that you've created by dreaming up a problem and creating an offering around that. Let's say, for example, you've already done that and you're looking for increasing your foothold in the market and trying to gain consumer confidence. A lot of people think that if we can provide a solution cheaper than the competition, it is good enough. Unfortunately, that is not true. Low cost is only something that will probably get you a foot in the door, but customer confidence only comes when you are able to deliver quality and what you are promising without breaking any of the promises that you have made as part of the solution. So to gain customer confidence, the simple mantra is make sure that you are under committing in terms of value, but once the consumer uses your product, he should get more value than you have promised. That's how you gain customer confidence, and that is the best way of making sure that the customers come back to you for repeat orders if that is the kind of product that you have created, or the customer becomes your ambassador and tells his friends or other parties or other business owners that hey, these guys give a great solution. I paid 10 rupees for their solution. I thought it would only give me 10 rupees in return, but it's actually created value, which is worth 25 rupees for me. That is a very, very good story to go around. So those are the two thoughts and the responses to your question, Tamal.
That's wonderfully put, actually. So we have the next one, sir. Please take it on.
Sentinel, what are the chances of open source Docker microservices for IoT and AI platforms in India? Wow. Okay. Now, a joke that I was reading, I think just about yesterday, right? There's a masked human, right? He's wearing a mask, and AI is written on his mask. Okay. And this is a geeky kind of a joke. I don't know if every one of you understand it. But once you take off the mask, what is inside that is an if-then else loop, right? That's what people call AI, but it's not truly AI. AI is much more than simple rule-based systems or if-then else statements. But that joke apart, when you're talking about open source Dockers for microservices, yes, it is a very interesting play. Yes, it is a very interesting thought, but you have to keep in mind that there are lots of open source platforms already available, which are enabling both AI and IoT solutions. And I don't know what you have in mind with this question, Sentinel, but it would be a very tough play, especially creating a sustainable business, a profitable business around open source offerings is not an easy not an easy thing to do. So I would suggest you leverage existing platforms and create a solution that the customer is willing to buy. Integrate existing open source solutions and create something that someone is willing to pay for. That might be a better bet than you trying to create an open source package. I would leave it to the institutions and foundations and other multilateral organizations who are trying to develop open platforms. The India Stack work that is happening across health, fintech, and education tech and other things. That is a very good example of an open source stack that is enabling not AI in the strict sense of the word, but that's an open source stack that is creating value for a lot of people, and it is better left to governments and volunteer-driven philanthropic organizations to do than for you to create a sustainable enterprise around.
Right, so I hope that answered the question for the person concerned. And if you have some time, will we take on 2, 3 more, please?
Yeah, I think there is a continuation from Tamal. Actually, we have a health tech product in association with a Tata Group company. But even after that, people are reluctant to adopt any new tech in health. Maybe health is a bit more difficult than others. I don't know. It is true. What you say is true. Health. People take health a lot more seriously than anything, so they're a bit wary about picking up a new solution in the health space. You look at it this way, right? You and me would go to a trusted doctor than a new doctor immediately, right? You go to the doctor that you have visited for, let's say, any ailment before a general practitioner, and then take his advice as to which specialist do I have to go and see for a particular ailment that I have. I think this goes in the same breath. It will take some time for people to pick up and work with new solutions, but unless it is a consumer solution, the brand that you have attached with you should be able to get you, if it's should be able to get your customers if it's a B2B solution. Let's say you're selling to hospitals or small health clinics across the country. The brand should be able to pull you through that kind of a problem. I think it is more of it could be more of a way, more of a challenge in how you're presenting the value that your solution brings to the customer. Maybe tinkering around with that and playing around with talking the customer's language rather than trying to tell him what your solution can do great, but understand his pain point and put your product in their context and say, hey, in this problem that you face, my solution will be the best. Maybe that way. Okay, moving on to someone, Geeta. I have a question. To get into entrepreneurship, how to get capital of our ideas in the current scenario in India and global economic scenario. Let's say I want to build a prototype from where we can get funds, but this is the first challenge, even if you have a market and an idea has employment opportunities. Okay, that is a quintessential question for any entrepreneur. Where do I raise the capital for to begin my company or take things forward from there? There's no straightforward answer to that. It's as simple as that. But there are enough avenues available for you to exploit if you're, let's say, working on a prototype of a particular product. The educational institution that you are attached with might be one of the best places to start, and seek their support in helping you develop the product and finish the prototype and put it out. There are a bunch of government programs that actually support prototyping in various spaces: health, electronics, that I'm very clearly aware of. Telecom, there are support functions. DST has a bunch of schemes that support. At the state level, state governments are creating multiple support mechanisms through incubators or directly through universities. So there are quite a few avenues that you can tap into. You don't have to raise money from the open market. There is support either available through your educational institution or through an incubator or someone who's attached with a particular government scheme. They should be able to help you. You don't have to go into that and probably spend money from your own pocket for developing the solution that you have.
Right, that's great. So, Mr. Lal, if you don't mind, could we just have one last parting words from you? And that would be, how would you summarize entrepreneurship in the 21st century? Last words from you, sir.
It's a personal mission these days. I think if the past 30 to 40 years were about digitalization, right? The next 40 to 50 years, especially in the 21st century, will be about saving the planet. It's as simple as that. We have barely scratched the surface of making sure that the solutions that we are using are better or greener in nature, or helping us become better citizens, helping us conserve the planet in one form or the other. I think the next 30-40 years, the growth story will be for solutions which address any of the sustainability challenges that we face. There are 17 UN SDGs. I'm hopeful most of you know what the 17 UN SDGs are. And for anybody, I mean, for human life, for plant life, or for animal life, solutions that will help conserving are going to be the norm going forward. In fact, I would go to the extent that a bunch of my friends in the VC community have said 3-4 years down the road, if you're coming to me for, let's say, a round of funding investment, one of the things that we will definitely look at is going to be what is the impact, what is the environmental impact or the ESG impact that your solution is going to have in whatever region or country or domain that you're operating in. And unless and until there is a positive impact that you can show, they may not be interested in funding you, no matter how good your solution is. In fact, it's going down that road very fast. So in short, the answer to your question, for the next 20-30 years, look at solutions which enhance sustainability, make you responsible businesses, or make others greener and responsible businesses, and that would be the growth story. And thank you for that question, Taina, because that leads into something that TGELF has been doing, that I've been associated with, which is the Entrepreneurship Sports Generation, where it's a global competition that focuses specifically on solutions that enable or enhance any of the UN SDGs, any of the 17 UN SDGs.
Yes, sir, that's very well put, very articulately put. Thank you so much. So, Ekaterina, any last words from you, please?
Thank you very much, Taina, for the opportunity, first of all. And it's always wonderful for us to be working with you and partnering with you. Thank you so much, Kirti, for your time and for your insights. It's always wonderful to be present at your sessions. And we also would like to thank our audiences for the support and for the active involvement today. It's really great to see and to witness a very, very interactive session. And as a last word, we at the Global Education Leadership Foundation are extremely keen on sustainability and sustainable entrepreneurship. And this is why we have launched our Entrepreneurship Sports Generation ESG initiative last year, which is both an initiative and a movement to connect sustainability within the UN SDGs and entrepreneurship. So if you're interested in partaking, if you're interested in joining the community or the movement, if you're interested in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, please check out the opportunity via the link that I've just shared on chat. And we'd love to see you part of the Entrepreneurship Sports Generation, because it's also a competition that offers you a wide range of great opportunities, networking, and life-changing prizes. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ekaterina. Thank you so much. So I conclude thanking our speaker, Mr. Lal. Thank you so much once again for your wonderful insights. Thanking the audience. Thanking our esteemed partners, TGLF and ESG, and of course you, Ekaterina. Thank you for all the support and the coordination that you have been as a pillar to us. I log out with our motto: innovate, connect, collaborate. Let's make technology transform and integrate. Don't forget to follow MSH on all our social media handles: LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and co. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.